sighting, measuring, and transferring are some skills that are going to come in incredibly handy when we want to start drawing objects in a representational fashion in a relatively accurate way when it comes to proportion and placement and location and all sorts of things, all sorts of basic kind of geometric and layout kind of things, not necessarily values and colors and other things like that. We are going to start. I'm going to start explaining it. I think it's really important. It's a confusing. It can be a very confusing skill. There's a lot of little skills involved that you have to combine in a way that kind of makes sense, and I find it helps to practice them in real simple situations and then apply them to more confusing or more realistic, you might say, situations. So I'm going to start off with just a printout of some rectangular shapes. You can start off with a photograph if you want, but what I'm not doing is starting off by trying to explain how to do this in drawing from real life, observing, an object in real life. It's confusing enough to figure out all the little skills and combining them in a way in a flat, two-dimensional sort of fashion, and we'll get to the other part. The first thing that I wanted to sort of just explain is that we're going to, in sighting, we're going to use our actual eyes and our actual vision to observe an object and to gather information about it. And we're going to help us do that, it's kind of nice to have a tool sometimes to help us gather information. Some people like to use an actual ruler. Some people try to simplify and just have something straight. It's handy to have something straight that is straight and you can use as a tool to find direction and create different marks like a ruler. More and more what I think is that trying to remember, it's harder. Well, I don't know about you, but for me, it's harder enough to keep track of my pencils and my erasers and my paper. And trying to add, the more tools I add, the more it seems like if I don't have something, then I'll just sort of maybe I won't draw. So I like to keep things as simple as possible. So as few tools as possible and stuff that I'm already kind of using, I find is really helpful. So I'm just using this tool that I have that I know is a straight tool and I know is relatively long, and I can use it to indicate things and I can use it to compare things, and I'll get to that in presently. Okay, let's see. For example, if I wanted to indicate some information about this rectangle that I'm observing, I can use this tool, also known as the pencil, to indicate with some marks where it seems like the outer contour of this object really changes directions dramatically. And of course I'm being somewhat obvious and silly, but go with it. So I'm using my pencil to indicate those marks. The other, some other pieces of information I'm going to use my pencil to gather information about. This object, I'm going to think about the distances. I'm going to think about the distance between that point and that point. And I'm going to use the tip of my pencil at one end, and I'm going to sort of pinch with my thumbnail at the other end. And then I can be relatively confident in knowing that this dimension, this distance from here to here is the same as the distance from here to here. We'll get to transferring that later, but For now, I'm just going to practice thinking about using this tool to measure distances, which is awkward enough if you haven't ever done it. So any skill that is worth learning is worth learning well and repeating over and over. So there, I'm doing it again. I'm just measuring. Let me see. Let me see if I measure this point from there to there. You get the idea. What if I wanted to measure the distance from there, that point, all the way across to that point? It would be that distance. What if I wanted to measure the distance between this object and this object? I use the tip of the pencil and my thumbnail. So this is, like I say, sort of a, if you've never done it, sort of a strange skill to just kind of get used to. But the more you get used to it, just quickly saying, okay, boom, I know that. This is an easy thing. The better you're going to be able to move on to transferring that information, etc. The last piece of information I want to figure out initially by using this tool, and as sort of some observation and thinking and comparing as well, is I want to find out, I want the midpoint of this line. I want to divide this space up into 4 equal quadrants. So to do that, first I'm going to guesstimate, if you will, where the midpoint might be. And then I'm going to use this tool to see if I am accurate in that estimate. And by comparing the distance from there to there to the distance from there to there, I can tell that yes, indeed, that is pretty close. I'll do the same thing for the vertical here. I'm gonna see if that distance back here is the same as that distance, and you see it's perfect. No, it's not. It's off. So pretty common for me to be, and for most folks to be off by at least a little bit. I need to raise this up. So let's see. There to there should equal there to there. For this demonstration, I'm going to say that's good. And one other piece of information, and I forgot to mention, is I want to use this tool that I know is straight to see if these, to help me accurately estimate what sort of slope or what sort of angle these lines are at. And clearly this is an obvious example, but I'm using this to sort of relate it to this line, and I'm looking at that, and I'm also then comparing my pencil to something else that I know is vertical, excuse me, is horizontal, which is the top of my paper right here. I hope that shows up on the video. But this tool just sort of helps me think, keep a consistent notion of what is both horizontal as well as what is vertical. I will elaborate on that more in later videos. But for now, I'm just going to finish off the splitting this up into quadrants just by some light construction lines. And that's all I want to show for this first video. So, gathering information visually about the object, using this tool to help us gather that information, making some indications of obvious points, also gathering information about more information about things like midpoints and horizontal, excuse me, horizontal and vertical. There you have it. That's it for this first video.